Hi, I'm Matt from Ratings.com. One of the many things we do here at Ratings is test and review laptops. We've tested over 85 so far, and this is our first ever YouTube review. Today, we have a roundup of the best student laptops because it's that time of year again. That time when you or your kids, grandkids, nephews, or nieces are going back to school. A time to see old friends, make new ones, and maybe learn a thing or two along the way. And what better way to do that than with our top pick, the Apple MacBook Pro 14, the ultimate status symbol. Obviously, this laptop is for a college student. You don't want to give a MacBook Pro to a teenager unless you have cash to burn. The MacBook is super sleek, compact, and well-built. If you own any Apple product, you know what this feels like. It has a gorgeous 120Hz mini LED display, one of the best speaker systems on the market, and Apple's famous haptic touchpad, which is pretty much the gold standard these days. The keyboard is great. It's tactile and quiet. The key travel is short, which some people may not like, although this is a matter of personal taste. This here is the M2 version. You can get this with an M2 Pro or M2 Max chip, which, as you may already know, are amazingly fast and power efficient. I said earlier that this is for college students. It's more specifically for college students who need this kind of processing power. So things like 3D graphics, filmmaking, science, and engineering fields that require running simulations or complex calculations. If you only need to write papers, you don't need this. Battery life is amazing at nearly 12 hours of light use. This laptop has fans, but they don't get very loud, so you don't have to worry about causing too much noise in a classroom. By the way, there's a 16-inch MacBook Pro. It's pretty much the same thing, but with better speakers and longer battery life. It's a chunky boy, so it might not fit in some bags. For Windows users, we recommend going with something like the Dell Precision 5570. This is the 2022 model with Intel 12th Gen CPU, and you can choose between an NVIDIA RTX A1000 or A2000 GPU. It's also a premium laptop, and it can do pretty much everything that MacBook Pros can, but there's a big trade-off: battery life. We're talking almost half the battery life of the MacBook Pros here. One advantage the Precision 5570 has over the MacBook Pro is that the RAM and SSD are user replaceable, so you can upgrade them later on. Moving on to our upper mid-range pick, the Apple MacBook Air. You can get this in a 13 or 15-inch size. If you don't plan on using an external monitor, it might be better to go with a 15-inch just because you have more room to work with. The 13-inch feels cramped when you need to have two windows side by side. Regardless of which one you choose, these two laptops are the most premium ultra-portables you can get, and the go-to option for any student with a light to moderately intensive workload. So we're talking text processing, web browsing, video playback, programming, photo, or the occasional video editing. Aside from processing power, the main differences between the MacBook Airs and MacBook Pros are the display, cooling, and ports. The Airs have a standard IPS panel, not mini LED, but they're still very pretty and super well calibrated out of the box. As for cooling, these are fanless laptops, so you'll never hear a peep out of them. This is great for those late night study sessions. And also, you don't want to be that pesky dorm roommate making noise all night. Port selection is very limited. You only get two USB-Cs, a MagSafe charging port, and a headphone jack. Also, the Airs can only support one external display unless you use a DisplayLink dock, but that's a separate purchase. On the Windows side, we have a couple of options. The best overall is the LG Gram 14. The 2023 model with Intel 13th Gen CPUs. But we also want to mention the ASUS Zenbook 14 Flip OLED as a close runner-up. We chose the Gram 14 because it's very portable at only 2.1 pounds and lasts almost 11 hours on battery. Performance is not a problem, and you get a good number of ports. Build quality is probably the biggest drawback compared to the MacBook Air. The Gram's magnesium chassis just doesn't feel as premium or rigid as the MacBook's all-aluminum build, even though it's a relatively sturdy laptop. As for the Zenbook, it's more versatile because it's a 2-in-1 convertible, and it has a sharper and brighter 90Hz OLED display. It also has this neat feature that lets you use the touchpad as a numpad. The trade-off here is battery life. It lasts almost 8 hours of light use, almost 3 hours less than the Gram 14. Another potential downside is the fact that the OLED screen is not flicker-free. The flickering is extremely minor and not noticeable to most people, but it might be bothersome to some. All right, let's move on to the more affordable mid-range model. First up is the Dell Inspiron 16 2-in-1. This is the 7635 model with AMD Ryzen 7000 CPUs. This one took us by surprise. Dell's Inspiron laptops often have a cheap, plasticky build, but the Inspiron 16 is super sturdy. It has a full aluminum chassis and exhibits very little flex on the keyboard deck and lid. It's not the easiest to find through marketplaces and sellers like Amazon and Best Buy, so getting it directly from Dell is best. It's on sale at the time of filming, with the base model starting at $600 US. It has a Full HD Plus 16:10 IPS display, a great keyboard, an excellent touchpad, and a little over 10 hours of battery life. The AMD Ryzen 7000 CPUs perform well, But again, this laptop is for students who only need to do light stuff, like writing an essay or browsing the web. You get lots of ports. The USB-Cs support charging and video output, but they're not Thunderbolt 4 or USB 4 ports, so they're limited to DisplayPort 1.4 and USB 3.2 Gen 2 data transfer speeds, which is up to 10 gigabits per second. One mid-range laptop we want to mention is the Acer Chromebook Spin 714. It's a popular 2-in-1 Chromebook and the Spin 713 successor. This is the Intel 12th gen model. You can flip the screen around and use it as a tablet, just like the Dell, and it supports pen input. The pen is basic. It's not the most comfortable to hold for long periods of time because it's thin and it doesn't support tilt, so it's more for note-taking than actual drawing. The keyboard and touchpad aren't as good as the Dell Inspiron, but the laptop has Thunderbolt 4 support. Battery life is outstanding at almost 14 hours of light use. The only thing to know is that Chrome OS is very limited in the type of applications you can install, so you need to make sure you can do all your schoolwork through a Chrome browser or Android app. This laptop is getting hard to find. There's a newer version with an Intel 13th gen CPU, but we haven't tested it. That said, it looks very similar to this one design-wise. Besides the CPU, the only upgrade seems to be the 1440p webcam. For our budget pick, we went with the Acer Swift 314. Although we don't consider Acer Swift's laptop as budget models, this is an exception because it's an older model from 2020, so it's much cheaper than it used to be. It's thin and light. It feels sturdy, and the battery lasts over 13 hours of light use. It has a reasonably bright Full HD IPS display, a fingerprint sensor, and Thunderbolt 4 support. The keyboard has good tactility, but feels a little cramped, so it may cause some fatigue over time. Our only other complaint is the terrible 720p webcam, though it might be a good thing if you're trying to hide the fact that you're still in PJs at 3 in the afternoon. You can get this laptop with an Intel 11th gen Core i5 or i7 processor. They're not the latest and fastest CPUs in the market, but they're still adequate for general productivity. By the way, you don't have to use the barrel plug power adapter that comes with the laptop. You can just charge the laptop via USB-C. And finally, we've arrived at our cheap pick, the Lenovo Chromebook C340-15. As you may have guessed from the name, it's a 15-inch Chromebook. It feels surprisingly well built for the price, and it has a great keyboard and touchpad. It's not exactly a powerhouse in terms of processing power. You can only get it with an Intel Pentium Gold or an 8th gen Core i3, but Chrome OS is a very lightweight operating system that runs well on low-end hardware. The problem is that you can only get 4 gigabytes of RAM, which isn't a lot, even for a Chromebook, so it's best suited for a younger student or someone with a light workload. We're talking a couple of Chrome tabs at most. Another compromise is the quality of the display. It's Full HD, but it doesn't get very bright and looks a tad washed out. We want to mention that all Chromebooks have an end-of-life date, meaning the date at which they will no longer receive updates. The C340 is scheduled to receive updates until June 2025, so it only has a little less than 2 years left. It's unfortunate, but at the same time, it costs $330 US, so we can't expect too much out of it. Well, that's it. That's our roundup of the best student laptops. What do you think? Which one would you choose? Are there other laptops that you believe should be on this list? Let us know in the comments below. Again, if you need more information, you can see the full reviews on our website. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.